Weapons magazine! Okay, so it's time to get better at Splatoon 2. And for me, there's like about 10 key things to really start ramping up your playing style in the game. First thing that you need to do is to focus on laying down as much paint as possible. You may feel like, it's all about splatting people and da-da-da-da-da. That'll kind of come with time anyway, but if you want to level up quickly and you want to get better at the game instantly and come higher up in the rankings in the regular battles, then you've just got to lay down as much paint as possible. So it's not about getting into fights or trying to beat the enemy that way. It's about really getting good coverage. So you need to keep an eye on the little counter in the top right hand corner as much as possible, and if you keep that ticking every time you move, then you're definitely going to put down as many points as possible, which will help you to level up and get better kit later on in the game. Okay, so our second tip for Splatoon 2 is it's all about that middle ground. Like, you're going to cover the early parts of the landscape, the maps, straight away. You're going to put down paint there easily, but it's the middle ground that's going to be the difference between winning matches and losing matches in the regular battle. So if you can control the middle ground, put as much paint down there and get into that middle ground as much as possible, then you'll win more matches and level up quicker because of the all-important match win bonus. Okay, so the third tip on our top 10, it's all about the team win. So the first two tips were about that sort of, but you need to focus on winning as a team, because you get that team win, you get the team win bonus, you get an extra 1,000 points, which helps you to level up quicker and get better kits and finish higher up on the league table. So it's kind of all about making sure you win as a team and supporting team members. So have a look at your map, look where the space is to fill, look where people are. Don't just kind of race in and hope for the best. Try to be a bit more strategic about what you're doing. Look for spaces to paint, swim around, don't bother laying down paint on top of your own paint. Kind of swim towards this paint and aim for that team win. So our next tip is going to sound pretty obvious, but it's really important to think about it in more than just sort of basic terms. Don't get splattered. If you get splattered, you lose so much time, which is more time that you could be laying down paint and obviously taking out the enemy. If you get splattered, you've got to go all the way back to your base, you've got to respawn, you've got to then fire out, you've got to either swim back into it. So make sure you kind of limit the amount of times that you get splattered. So sometimes it's a case of backtracking and getting out of the way of people. Sometimes it's a case of just looking for spare space where there's places to paint on the map. Sometimes it's a case of just moving as quickly as possible, so laying down some paint, doing a little bit of swimming, laying down some paint, doing a little bit of swimming. But it's a really important rule: don't get splattered. A big part of not getting splattered is picking your location to jump back into the battle after a respawn. So in Splatoon, if you've played Splatoon, you will respawn and then use the map on the kind of Wii U screen to be able to jump back into the battle, but that isn't available on the Switch. Instead, you use the X button to pull up the map and the gyroscope movements to be able to see where you're going to land and which one of your teammates you're going to land close to. So the point here is not to just fire straight back in where you're going to get splatted instantly. You need to be really smart about where you're going to land back into the action. So sometimes it's a case of trying to be a little bit further back. Other times it's a case of jumping beyond where the enemies have got to. So it's just have a look around, see where you're going to land. Think about how you're going to move back into the action with the kind of jump back after the spawn. Really important one to hone your skills on. If you can get that right, then you'll definitely lay down more paint, get splattered much less times, and hopefully take the fight to the opposition a little bit better, because you'll just be a bit smarter about where you're going to land. Okay, so tip number 6. Sometimes it's just better to swim from the base. You don't always have to fire straight back into the action. Sometimes it's just better to swim from the base. And that can be for lots of different reasons. Maybe there's an area of enemy paints that you need to cover. Maybe it's just if you fire back into the action, there's too many enemies in that area, in which case you're just better off swimming, getting a good look in to see what's going on in the kind of in the map, in the world, and then kind of swimming around to it. Also, it might be just that you want to be able to approach the enemy a little bit better, so kind of move around them, which kind of leads on to the next tip, which is sometimes you don't want to take an enemy straight on. You want to kind of go around them. So this is kind of a really important war battle tip. You don't always want to go straight into the face of an enemy. Sometimes it's better to round them, go around them, come at them from the side, come at them from behind them. You know, essentially, if you can get around an enemy and pop up where they didn't expect you to be, then you can get in a lot of kills, which will help your stats and help your team. Because actually, the more times you kill an enemy, the more free painting the rest of your teammates will have. So every time you do take one out, and if you can do it in a smart way, like rounding the enemy and kind of popping up by surprise, then you'll definitely win more matches. Tip number 8. Essentially, one of the places you're going to get killed most is close to your enemy base. So know what you're getting into before you get close to it. Go in there if you want to lay down paint, or if you want to take out an enemy, but try to not spend loads of time in there. It's a danger area. It's all about the middle ground anyway, because they're going to keep coming out and taking out that space every time they respawn. So kind of be a bit sensible when you go into the enemy base area. Now that we've got the main tips which will help you to lay down more paint and not get splattered as much as you did previously, kind of the next tip is about what do you do when you come face to face with one of the enemies. And one of the worst things that people tend to do as they're laying down paint is point their gun downwards. And what this means is that yes, you'll be able to probably see where you're putting down paint a little bit better, but what it also means is that you're aiming downwards, so when you do find somebody in front of you, your aim will be so much worse than theirs and they'll be able to kill you a little bit quicker. So it's really important to keep your weapon aimed straight ahead most of the time. If you do that, then you'll just be more ready to put in a more accurate shot to take out an enemy when they do pop up in front of you. You'll be able to blast them a little bit quicker, you'll be able to aim at them a little bit quicker, and you'll still be able to put down as much paint as you did previously. You don't need to look down to lay down paint, essentially. So make sure you aim upwards all the way through the game. So our final tip in our top 10 is to do with the roller. It's a great weapon. You can put down a good amount of paint, admittedly not the most amount of paint, but a decent amount of paint, and it's a nice, safe, protective weapon for you to be able to get down paint, potentially take out enemies. But what we kind of see a lot of is people not splatting their roller and just rolling straight into people, which can work sometimes, especially if the enemy's looking the other way. But the reality is that the best way you'll get more of the enemy with your roller is if you splat the roller, which fires out a wave of paint in front of you. This in Splatoon 2 is even bigger if you can do it with a jump splat. It may not have as much of a wide berth, but you can get much further coverage in front of you, which can be really useful. So make sure you splat your roller, and don't just splat it, try and get a good long splat every now and again in, especially if an enemy's backing off. It's really important, and in fact that's one of the important things to do when you've got the roller yourself. If you can see somebody coming towards you with their paint gun firing like crazy, just back off and splat your roller. It'll give you enough time to be able to get in a hit. Thanks for tuning in to our guide to getting better at Splatoon 2. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share, like and comment as much as possible. Cheers guys, goodbye. Magazine!